To another episode of Creativity Knows No Borders. My name is Adriano. I'm your host.
This podcast was made possible through the support of Africa No Filter, a sponsored project Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, with funding provided by GIZ on behalf of the government of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Today, just a guest, Iria Marina from Mozambique. I've known her for a bit now. Used to know her in the fashion space, in the photography space, but she's been telling me that she's kind of made a career change and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be an interesting conversation either way. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Amazing. Please introduce yourself better than I did. Who are you? What do you do? What are you up to? And all that kind of stuff.
You did a fantastic job. But yeah, my name is Iria Marina. I'm from Mozambique, but I currently live in South Africa. What I do now is property development, procurement, social media, and market for property. Yeah, that's what I do now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, just a brief background. Where are you from? And where have you traveled to, I guess, just for some context, so the audience can understand your travels across Africa and experience borders.
Well, I'm from Mozambique. I was born there, but at an early age, I think around 8, my parents took us out of Mozambique, my brother and I. We went to Swaziland, and I did primary school there and half of high school there. Then I came to South Africa to do high school and university. After a little bit, I went to Kenya. From there, I returned, and then I went to New York to study documentary filmmaking. At some point, I lived in Cape Town, and I'm back in Joburg. I've traveled to just for pleasure. I've gone to Rwanda, I've gone to Zimbabwe. My family, I think some of my family is from Zimbabwe, Malawi, like I said, Kenya, Tanzania. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
Amazing. You got them stamps.
I've got a few. Not too many. I want more. It's okay for you.
Yeah. Funny enough, I'm half Zimbabwean and half Malawian, so I guess there's some relation to country there, in terms of familiar relation.
Yeah, my dad's family, they from the northern part of Mozambique that borders Mutare.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's called Imani. So his dad was from the Mozambican side, and his mom was from the Zimbabwean side. So my grandmother's family is all Zimbabwean.
Yeah, it is a very close proximity to each other. So definitely people would be mingling and talking to each other and creating families and all that and stuff. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's the convents and the Catholic schools. So there was a lot of integration in Zimbabweans.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I don't know if your grandparents ever told you there are kids that go to school either in Zimbabwe, they literally every single day cross the border to go to school in Zimbabwe or vice versa, and trading and all that kind of stuff. Because in my travels, when I'm going in Southern Africa, Mutare is a very good node to travel to other countries from, basically. I don't know if you've ever done the bus route, but that's how it works there. It's quite interesting.
Oh, nice. No, I've only done car, never a bus, and it was at an early age. Yeah, that's interesting to know.
Yeah,
but it's only 30 minutes. Oh, it makes sense.
100%. You're still a creative and an entrepreneur now. Some of the best countries you've traveled to on the continent that you feel you would move to if ever life was like, hey, you want to move here, basically for your own creativity, but also for business. Which countries or cities in Africa would you want to move to?
Well, I've never been to countries in West Africa, but I'm very drawn to what they are doing there because I'm very much about sustainability. And I like rawness and creativity. So I love hearing about, like the leather in Senegal, and being able to touch and the craftsmanship there. I love hearing about Ghana and the fabric making and how raw it is, So for me, my dream would be to definitely live like in a West African country just to experience some of that rawness and the art. Though I did experience a lot of it in Kenya. Kenyans are doing amazing things. I lived there for a while. I had someone who was Kenyan for like 6 years. So they are doing amazing things, whether it's with fabric, brass, leather. So that's also a space that I really, really love. Yeah, so I think I would go back in terms of artistry to Kenya. I like it there. I like it there. And Rwanda is a new country, but it's really fresh. Like, it's nice to go to a country and feel super safe, but also feel like the opportunities are so open and vast. So that's also another country where I think they're doing some amazing things. Yeah, and I've been there, so yeah. I was able to see it first. I like the weather.
Amazing. I've never been. I've been wanting to go to Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya. Those are my top 3 right now to kind of visit urgently, basically. For the creative industries also, and entrepreneurship space. I'm just interested in how they are maneuvering and moving around. So definitely
Uganda is definitely also on the list. Actually, forgot to add that one. Definitely on the list.
Yeah, amazing. But when it comes then to, so I'm assuming you're still on your Mozambican passport. What is the passport like? Yes.
No, I am a citizen of South Africa.
Okay. Oh, so you kind of transitioned to South African passport. So I guess does it open more doors compared to the Mozambican passport?
I think so, yeah, for sure. But I can't tell you this because I've been a South African citizen for a very long time. I've been here a very long time. So I've only used my South African citizenship. So yeah, I've never used anywhere I've gone to, all the countries I'm telling you, it's all been with the South African citizenships. Yeah. There's no, I'm not illegal.
100%. I know that. From what I'm experienced, from what I've seen, South African passport is a really good passport to travel with on the continent. It seems to be includes of visa price to the. Sorry?
It's a great passport.
Yes, 100%. So it's definitely a great passport. Do you sometimes, even when you're coming back into South Africa, do you ever get asked, are you really South African? Because I'm assuming you still have some semblance of an accent or mannerism that they might question sometimes?
No, everyone thinks I'm South African just based on my physique. So based on my physique, if you don't speak to me, and I guess we're Bantu people, I look like, I guess you could see like a Zulu girl or whatever. I'm light-skinned. I'm very curvy, So that's immediately like an automatic, you South African. The only thing that may deter, but not even deter, because the thing with South Africans is that South Africans are so open and liberal, even in their style, that it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So you can have a style that's super unique and weird, where you can even be wearing goth clothes and it doesn't matter. You will still be stamped as a South African based on your features, So as much as I have Mozambican facial features. My body is very, very much like a South African body. So I never questioned or differentiated. And to be fair, some of my family is South African. So I think in the Bantu area, I think we just all traveled, because I have family here in South Africa.
Yeah. That's interesting to know. Yeah, I get South African sometimes from physical features, but it depends on how my dress code is that day and also how old my head is. Because sometimes people think I'm Somalian or some other. Rarely, funny enough, rarely ever Zimbabwean. It's so interesting. Rarely ever. Only when I open my mouth, then there's a question definitely probably Zimbabwean or something like that.
That you said Zimbabwean, I'm like Zimbabwean. For some reason, I did not think that you were Zimbabwean.
That's interesting.
All this time.
Yeah, I really get that. All this time. And then in your travels, right, on the continent, there's this idea that everyone is talking about of better borders, better trade, allowing better trade, allowing more creativity and all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on this open borders policy and thinking and framework around a more, necessarily just open everyone can just go in, but a more fluid process? What are your experiences and thinking around that?
Well, I think it's great. I think as Africans, we should be able to travel to each other's countries, right? The way it's done in Europe, etc. So I think it's about time that we start being open and being able to trade. I think it will avoid a lot of also being illegal, because at the end of the day, people will travel whether it's legal or not. They will jump borders, right? But of course, the problem with us is that we have different problems where it's at some countries there's war, so there's a lot of immigrants. So once you open a border, then a country then gets way too many people from another country, and then that also creates a bit of a problem. You know what I mean? So as much as I think it's great, I think obviously there has to be some sort of control. But in the creative space, I find it fantastic. It's so nice to be able to be here 3 months and be there 3 months and being able to learn from our brothers and sisters. And What's funny is that South African passport gives you the ability to go to many countries, right? Without a visa. But I feel like it's the most, how do I put it? It's the most conservative country. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think people make use of their privilege. Excuse me. A lot of people don't even travel out of a province here, you know?
Definitely, I know. I agree with you. It's quite strange that people don't necessarily. I guess also access to information, access to resources about what kind of privilege the South African passport has. I think more information is required on them. You're currently in Johannesburg. You've experienced Johannesburg. A lot of people I'm speaking to are saying Johannesburg is like the central node for creatives and entrepreneurs to kind of experience once in a while. What are your thoughts on that?
And the reason I moved back to South Africa was because I felt that in the entrepreneur sector, I wasn't growing as much in Mozambique. So what was happening is a lot of my clients are international, whether it be, and by international, I mean Europe, Americas, the rest of Africa. And Mozambique does not create for an easy platform for you to deliver your craft, right? I mean, like, as in post, as in mail, as in deliver, ship, Wow. So I decided, okay, it's easier to continue doing my craft in Mozambique and then deal with the logistics of sending it to South Africa. And then from South Africa, I send it to the rest of the world because I can create my online shop, put it whether I want. Even if I want to sell things in South Africa, I can put it on whether it's Take-A-Lot, Amazon, it's just easier than staying in Mozambique where then I'm having to, if a product costs, let's say a product costs 3,000 Rand, then to ship that product, it's 4,000 Rand. You know what I mean? It just wasn't making sense in terms of creativity. So as a business, another thing is majority of my clients were not Mozambicans, because I have a niche type of clientele and most of my clients were from here and from like all over the world. So it made sense for me to come here. The problem with that is that the logistics of now, because I had a company there, right? It was my fashion company, my atelier. I could not find like trustworthy people to manage the side of my company, that side, and for me to be this side. Things wouldn't happen. It would be late, or my employees would just do their own things. And now that the boss is not there, just, they don't have a good work ethic. Now they're stealing your clients, doing clothes behind your back in your own company, and I don't see a way of working where I now have to police people. I don't believe in that. I believe that you are paid to do your work. What I did with my company is I asked them how much they wanted to get paid per item. So you are getting paid what you asked for. So why are you still going behind my back? You know what I mean? So I just ended up shutting it all down. I just decided, what? This is frustrating me. I was able to keep the company open through COVID, made a lot of money, made sure my employees had money through COVID. When a lot of companies shut down, I was able to find innovative ideas to keep the company open and make a lot of money. Right. So I think I also got hurt, my heart hurts at the fact that, we've been together for 5 years and you are not taking your responsibility seriously as my employees. You're going behind my back. You're doing things. And I can't be there to control every step. And I don't want to because it's not a jail. This is a work environment. I decided to just shut it down. And it was at a period where I unfortunately also got diagnosed with depression. So it's been shut down for a bit. Now, I'm not so sure if I'll revive it, but we'll see.
Yeah. No, I totally understand you, like the challenges of managing people and during COVID and post-COVID. It was a very traumatic experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Just in general in the society. And it's a struggle to manage people in different spaces and all that. I mean, hopefully one day you get the energy to restart it because I think we need more entrepreneurs like you in this space anyway.
This is to hopefully come back to it. But I'm at a space where, entrepreneurship is tiring. I've been doing it for a very long time. I can be a leader, but I don't want to be a boss. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. That's where I'm at too right now.
Yeah. So because I'm naturally a leader, but I'm also very good at working with people. Like I like teamwork. So what I would do to feed off on that, I would do like, these embassies would have like a sustainable competition or things like that. So they'll be like, oh, Iria, can you mentor? I'm like, no, I don't want to mentor. I want to be the student. Not because I needed to be the student, but just because I want to participate in a group setting, and not be the head thing, like I don't want to mentor. I also want to learn, I would do things like that to feed my soul. Like that's a camaraderie soul. But I'm at a point where I just want to have a job where, yes, if my function is that I'm a leader, then yes, but I'm not a boss.
No, 100% I'm with you there. Same thing why I left Creative Nestlings last year, and people don't understand why. It's because I no longer want to be the boss. I want to work in a team. I want to be I'm okay being a leader. I'm working group dynamics, new challenges, new opportunities. But as long as I am not the boss, I'm happy that way. And it's hard to explain to people, because now when you're job searching, they're like, why would you leave that? They don't understand why you want to leave that kind of experience. But you're like, I'm just looking for something new and different, so I can get new and then something new and bring my experiences.
Yeah. And I think the one thing about hiring entrepreneurs, I've heard someone say to me, I once applied for a creative job in Standard Bank, and they're like, but why would you leave this amazing thing you're doing? Right. And it's because the boss, the person who interviewed me, knew my company very well. And she also was one of my clients. Right. And I said, this amazing thing has its difficulties, and you are my client. So you will never know the behind the curtain. And what difficulties I'm facing. And you think it's amazing because you love my creativity. You love my work. You're like, whoa, if I could do this. But there's a lot of pain also in this work, There's a lot of struggles in this work. So I would leave because right now I need a break from that. It was a bit of a challenge because when people look at you, they think, oh, but are you then not going to leave us? But it's like, no, I've committed myself to being an entrepreneur for 10 years. If I've done that, it means that I have resilience in me, because being an entrepreneur is the hardest thing you can do. In a business setting.
100% agree. Yeah, 100% agree with you.
Yeah. So for me, it makes sense to hire someone who's done entrepreneur because they also are, number one, multi-skilled. Number two, super hardworking and resilient. And number three, problem solvers. Like, one thing doesn't work, you've got B, C, and D subconsciously.
Yeah. No, 100% with you. And very committed people. I was saying someone, I've been committed to creative business for 14 years. That shows my commitment to when I truly believe in something, that I'm willing to go the extra mile. And that's quite interesting to see how the response is. Like, why would you leave? Why do you want to come into this world? I'm like, that's what I'm looking for, that new challenge and that new dynamic and stuff. So it's an interesting time to be, I guess, as entrepreneurs transitioning to trying to become corporate duo of people and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of leadership, what if one day you become the leader for the African Union, for example? That's supposedly the most powerful organization in Africa, that is supposed to be ushering a new way of thinking around policy and borders, infrastructure, around finance and all that kind of stuff. What are some of the things that you think, if you were in that kind of position, you would change? In the hypothetically, of course.
What a hard question. This one requires for me to think a lot.
Yeah.
This one is not an easy one. I think let's come back to it. I think I need to just still what I would change. Yeah. Because out of context, you know what I mean? I want to. This is a big question. As an African Union leader, what would you change?
Yeah. No, why I'm asking that kind of question is...
Sorry. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. You speak.
No, I was saying the reason why I'm asking this question is because I think as creators and entrepreneurs and young people, we don't necessarily ever think about the people that control our lives, people that make the policies, the placemakers, the people that make that maintain and keep these borders alive, use the infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's quite important to dream ourselves in those kind of positions based on our experiences, and then try and see what we would change, because we are the future people that are going to be in those kind of positions either way. So why not start thinking about those kind of things, because they affect us anyway. We're seeing firsthand what it takes when borders are closed up and all that kind of stuff. So definitely that's why the question is like that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would definitely change, and this is a conversation that I have with a friend of mine all the time, is the ability for us Africans to be able to do both, whether it's a desk job and a creative So a friend of mine is a banker, right? So he works for the land bank, and at the same time, he has a refurb furnishing business, right? So it's a very intellectual, high power. He studied finance, right? Which is great because finance is his thing, and he's able to know about, how money works, right? But he's also a creative. So he indulges his creativity with this furniture company that he refurbs, he designs, and then he's making money double, So as much as he has employment, he also has the ability to be an entrepreneur, but also a creative one, because this is also, remember that the creative side, the furniture one, is a choice, right? He can choose to leave it, and he will not eat, right? So one of the things that I think would be important for us Africans to do, and I'm seeing this now because of what's happening even with USAID, etc., right? It's like, oh, America has stopped giving us money. Do we stop functioning now? No. Why should we stop functioning now? We have abilities, right? Why not use them? So I think that that's one thing that I feel that we have slacked on as Africans, but not, I find that South Africa does better. But this is if you're an educated person in South Africa.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think you're speaking holistically around policy that kind of shapes individuals and community, society to be able to self-determine and then be able to improve their quality of lives. So you see, you've answered it already, because I think it's important things that we need to be considering and thinking about, because this borders really affect so much of our livelihoods, and I think we tend to not see why, because like I said, some people don't leave the province, some people don't leave the cities and countries and all that kind of stuff, and this borders are not just physical, they're also mental in how we see ourselves as part of the all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I'm with you.
I realized that the way, as a Mozambican, I think very different from many Mozambicans. I mean, a cousin of mine was recently asking me like, oh, do you know of like job opportunities? And I understand that like with my age, I have so much experience, and so I'm so vast, but I've always been able to self-teach, self-investigate, things like that. Like I've always been that kind of person. I mean, my mom is like, you're a doctor without a degree, because I'm so like in touch with everything in terms of knowledge. I go and I research, that is something that I was taught here with my education in South Africa, right? But that's not something that everyone has. I mean, if you notice during COVID, everyone had to go online. My father is a lecturer, and he said that he had the worst time because people didn't know how to use a computer. They didn't know how to study by themselves because they can only study when a teacher is in the room looking at them. You know what I mean? Simple things where you just take for granted, and you're like, yo, us Africans are really backwards in the saying, like there's such a parallel world where one side is advancing and the rest is not. We have everything. We have every mineral. We are so capable. Yeah.
100% with you there. And I think you're right. The education is component, not even like school, but education of how to use what's around you, how to research, how to use the tools that are readily available and all that kind of stuff. I think it's super, super important. We haven't seen it in the age. Yeah. I'm always fascinated about how, like in Africa, the people always talk about how internet penetration is not great, but yet WhatsApp is big in Africa, Facebook is big in Africa. But I realize people don't actually go outside of those immediate platforms per se. They don't know where to go. Google is such a vast space for them to go onto that they don't know where to go and where to start. And I think we need more education that is grounded in the tools that are available, especially in Africa. The first thing you should know is about how to use technology, because it's there, but that's the biggest catalyst and enabler. Technology is the fire of our lifetime. And I think people should be leveraging, you know how to use a computer, knowing how to use a phone, knowing how to Google and all that kind of stuff. I think is paramount to survival right now in society. And using our hands, we know how to do so. But then, like you said, we have the minerals, but let's keep those raw and then be able to process them and all ourselves instead of just selling them to everybody else and then selling them back to us. So 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? Africans are very good with money. Very good. I feel like Africans are like natural finance people. Give an African a phone. Like, I just realized that, M-Pesa.
Yes.
Yeah, M-Pesa, like, money through cell phone, etc. Every African knows how to use it.
Yes.
It has to do with what? Money.
Money.
Anything that and people, because they're interested in money, they automatically will learn with a passion, right? You give them something else, right? On the same platform, in that same phone, it's going to be, I don't know. It's not because they don't know. It's because it's the interest factor.
Yeah, the incentive.
Yeah, it's the incentives. But we can't even sometimes it's like, okay, so you are telling me you can't study. If you can do all these transactions via M-Pesa and you've taught yourself, then you can study also. You know what I mean?
No.
Because that
Yeah. I think something you said about localizing technology, building our own technology for our environment. I think the reason why M-Pesa is so successful compared to other technologies that way are readily available to move money around. What's the money management transfer, remit, and all that kind of stuff. I think what made M-Pesa quite impeccable is because it was for Africans by Africans. So it was very localized, in its inception. So I think it's something to be said about that. So I think we need to be building more technologies that are really rooted on the continent. Then I think there'll be higher adoption compared to what's already available. I was speaking to someone the other day about how is that why is there no African version of a Zoom, for example, or an African version of an Adobe software? Or why aren't we making these things that clearly we need, but they're not being adopted here? Because clearly there's a barrier, right? That translation is a barrier. So how do we make them more localized and more readily available for our people? And make some new business and new companies and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's opportunity there. So I'm with you there. And that's a really good example, the M-Pesa one. Because I know people, for example, don't know how to use e-wallet easily. Why is that? Trying to send someone an e-wallet is like a mission.
My helper never knew how to use e-wallet. Then I told her, if you want your money, you will learn how to use e-wallet. I'm not good at these things. You will learn. A week later, you can send me money via e-wallet. I don't know. It's about choices. I feel like what you said also is like the other one thing that M-Pesa did that was so successful is, remember, I was talking about the fact that a lot of resources are easily adaptable to educated people. It was by Africans, for Africans of any background, whether you are poor or rich. And what's so funny is that when it came out, I mean, I know rich people that until today don't use M-Pesa. You know what I mean? But the poor, everyone has M-Pesa. To be fair, majority of the country consists of the lower pop, the less fortunate. So if you open your mind and think about that, right, then that's the advantage here. Because I don't know if an African Zoom would be great. But then again, we're talking about it's for the niche people, the people in business, what is it called? The 1% of Africans who are doing well in it.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say an example actually of an African Zoom is WhatsApp video, right? The high adoption of WhatsApp as a calling service and video service and all that kind of stuff, even to conduct business now, it's penetrating across Africa. So I guess that would be the answer of like a Zoom for Africa, but it's not necessarily an African platform. But there's high adoption across Africa. I think Africa is one of the biggest markets for WhatsApp. So I think that kind of answers that kind of question and all that kind of stuff. But we need more of our own technology based on our needs. Like logistics. Why is logistics so hard? Like you said earlier on, sending a package across the continent is so difficult. A flight across the continent is so expensive. So what are we doing as Africans to kind of invest to make those things more accessible and all that kind of stuff? I think is what we need to be looking at.
The school of logistics, I tell you, it's not even just like in small entrepreneurs like me. It's just in Africa as a whole. I mean, a friend of mine who worked in Ministry of Transportation was talking about the fact that she went to the northern part, she traveled all the way to north to see what Mozambicans are cultivating and making, right? And harvesting. One of the things that we actually have a lot of is cotton. We have a lot of cotton, right?
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it stays in these containers and then it just gets rotten, and then because it doesn't get processed and it doesn't get moved. Why? Purely and solely because of logistics. And solely because of logistics. We as Africans have a huge problem with logistics, huge, and unfortunately we do have to blame the government because something like cotton producing, etc., these are things that the government deals with private sectors, etc., and if it's not moving, then they are not doing something about it.
Yeah, and also why if instead of being wasted, why is it not being processed into fabric and all the different needs that we have for cotton? Yeah,
It's not being processed in Mozambique. Like most things, Mozambique had so much fertile land. So many companies, like South African companies, are in Mozambique, whether it's for fruits, for vegetables, cotton, etc. All of them producing things and then sending them to South Africa, right? Refining and processing in South Africa and then selling it to us higher price. So selling it back.
Yeah.
And it's like all of this came from Mozambique, but we still have to pay more. But these are government sanctions. You know what? We have no control. But they could do better.
By participating actively as citizens and trying to be in those roles as much as possible, but thinking about it before we even get there, this challenge and having this kind of conversation, I think could change the future. Speaking of Mozambican borders, I'm sure you saw recently there was that shut off between South Africa and Mozambique, so people couldn't transport goods, people couldn't move between the two countries. And funny enough, being in Nelspruit, I realized how much South Africa relies on Mozambicans being able to do the drive from Maputo to Nelspruit, to shop at the mall, to shop for clothes, experience tourism and all that kind of stuff. And no one was really talking about it as much. Only when it was really critical, that was a crash. Yeah. And that was very interesting for me because then I realized that border is crucial because normally people complain about this Mozambican border as a very busy one. But the Mozambican border between South Africa is very busy and very active in terms of adding to the GDP of South Africa and particularly Mpumalanga, basically.
Huge. I mean, Mozambique is the fourth in terms of making it South Africa's economy great and powerful. I think Mozambique comes in at number 4. We have to remember that we don't only have the border, but we also have the sea. And a lot of things are transported from sea and then from our sea to South Africa by border, right? And this is when you really see how countries have to work together. The Mpumalanga economy dropped from us having our unrest, right? Because at that point, so Mozambique, South African in the Mpumalanga province relies so much in Mozambicans that if Mozambicans shut down a border, there is no money and they are not making money, right? And then we think about it and we're like, then why don't we respect each other? And why is it that every time we pass through a border, we make it hell as if, like South Africans, you pass through a border and Mozambican is like, oh, we're doing you a favor by allowing you into our country. No one is doing anyone a favor. You need us as much as we need you, as much as we need your food and stuff. Yeah. You need us to be buying so that economy, stays up there. So this is when I just thought, this is when you should see that, like, as Africans, we need to work together again and again and again, because the unrest affected South Africa more than it did Mozambique. The reason why is this. For South Africa, as much as there's corruption here, there's also fairness. You white Zimbabwean, right? Like things work here. You can talk about the government hospitals being terrible, but if you've not experienced a government hospital in other African countries, you're gonna think that the government hospitals here are 5-star. You know what I mean? Like things like that, right? So it's for us, who lost money in the unrest are the rich people, the ones who have the mines, the ones who have the contracts. It's basically the government, the top 1% of Mozambicans. Yeah. Mozambique in themselves, especially like the lower part, stayed suffering because it's no different. Whether there's an unrest or it's peace, they're still suffering. Things are still horrible. Yeah. Roads are still full of sewage and blocked pipes, and there's no jobs, there's no conditions. So that money doesn't go to any of the lower part people. You know what I mean? Hence why when you even look at the economy, you realize that Mozambican economy, like you would think that it tanked and it went down. It didn't. And it should have. If something like that happens in South Africa, the economy goes down. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. And that's when you realize the benefits of a country. If your economy goes down, it means that the money is actually going to the people. I'm not saying all of people, like it's functioning. You know what I mean? It's like if an unrest happens in Zimbabwe, like, right? It's not gonna affect the lower part because it's all done for the rich. So they are losing money in the mines or whatever, because they are the ones who take advantage of the economy.
Oh, yeah.
don't. So it doesn't actually matter.
And that's a very good observation, because you're right. South Africa did benefit a lot. They did lose a lot in the unrest in Mozambique. They should have, if there was a better peaceful arrangement between the two countries, I think better solutions would come up, because these are trading partners, and these borders are critical to survival for many people on both sides. So it's definitely agree with you. That was an interesting observation to see it. We all need each other, yeah.
To feel and see how a country's economy is affected and what works. And that's when I realized I don't think that South Africans know the privilege they have of how their country functions. And yes, they should be fighting for better, for less corruption, yes. But it's still like a privilege to have a system that works better than other African countries.
Yeah. And also it benefits from other African countries at the same time to keep that stability that it has. Yeah. 100% with you. 100% with you there. I guess my last question then is, where do you, as a creative entrepreneur, how do we better educate each other, I guess, on borders and policy and all that kind of stuff from your experience? How do we better create an environment where we're educating each other and what's happening in different countries and all that kind of stuff?
The one thing, you wanted to do this podcast, and I was like, no, I don't want to do it. It's because I feel like we have a lot of conversations and we do less, right? So I feel that as a creative, I think a lot of my duties, I think I have a political family. I have, so a lot of the things that I do, I take politics into consideration. I take countries into consideration. I take the economy into consideration, things like that, right? So even when I did my 90s project exhibition, it was about the economy. As much as a creative project, it was about the economy and how things have changed from civil war to peace treaties. That's what it was all about, right? Yeah. So I think being the only creative, I'm not the only creative, but in terms of active creativity, right? Because then everyone is like an economist, a lawyer, a doctor, or accountant, or whatever, right? But I'm the only active creative in my family, surrounded by people who have these, we'll call it intellectual jobs. It allows you to see things in a different spectrum. So I don't see things in a gullible way. I see things in a very also intellectual view, right?
Yeah.
So when I look at it, I look at how do we merge creativity and the left and the right brain, right? So that it makes sense and it's beneficial. Okay. Like how I explained to you about my friend who is a finance at the land bank, but is also a creative, right? How do we do that? How do we merge both? And how do we merge it cross-border? Because I've been part of so many workshops where it's about sustainability and etc. Whether it be, cross countries, in Mozambique, and then we bring people from all over the world and we do these workshops, and then they end, and then the workshop ends and there's no follow up and there's no follow through, and it's almost as if the embassies, etc., NGOs are doing this just to meet their quota. I think your quota in Africa is not enough. Because once you meet your quota, if you don't stay consistent and follow up, and it's a program that is continuous, it tanks. We see it all the time. We see it in things like you go to the northern part of Mozambique, and there were NGOs there, and they build wells and they build schools. 5 years later, the schools only have the roofs. They don't have the windows. They don't have teachers. They're not functioning, right? Why? Because you were there to only meet your quota, but you didn't do the job of following up or create companies that then do the follow-up work of how do we continue to educate people, because you don't educate people in 6 months from building that school. It's a life process. It's a school. It's a life school, especially people who have for 50 years never seen a school, never had education. You don't just come in 6 months, okay, I've done it, and then I go. And think that will become a habit. My thing, the reason why, as an artist, I got heartbroken and disappointed was I felt like even with the exhibitions I was doing, it was, oh, great. And we are talking about it and great. And we've taken the pictures and we've succeeded and you've sold paintings. And then what?
Yeah.
What then? My
action
project, we did it. And then what? Oh, it was great. Yeah. And then what? What more? So I felt like as an artist, I'm not doing my job if I'm just doing something that then just, yes, I made money, and I need money to survive. The point of doing it was to impact my country and my fellow people and to have the conversation to continue, because even when I do an exhibition, I have talks. Like in the beginning, I have talks after, because I want, like we say, like we want the conversation to continue, right? But then you can't do it alone. You need a team. You need your government. You need support. And if your government doesn't do it, the easiest way for us humans to get into something is visually. It's through art, It's through art. So how is it that the government has not realized that this is so necessary, and how much you can change visually, like through artists, how much you can do, and that those two parallels of like the left and the right brain can work, right? So this is not just like as a Mozambican creative in Mozambique. This is just as a creative as a whole. If we are doing these exchanges and this embassy sends these people to this place and let's merge the two components, the left and the right brain, because the one doesn't work without the other.
Without the other. 100% agree with you. Yeah, because we tend to focus on,
we tend to separate. Like even now, as I'm looking for a job, right? I'm thinking about it and I'm like, you know what? I saw myself, what's so funny about looking for a job is I had so much, like such little low self-esteem when I started the job search, because I haven't done it in such a long time, right? But then creating my portfolio and being very careful in terms of being very, very true to myself, I realized for the first time in one package, all that I've done. The fact that, I'm even a property developer right now, and I was a businesswoman, I had an entrepreneur, but at the same time, I'm a creative and I can use photography and video to speak about issues, whether it's government policies, whether it's just art, whether it's just human interaction. At the same time, I volunteer for a women's empowerment organization, and I'm there and committed to all of that. That's actually a plus. And then I was like, if I had to employ someone with all these skills, and I saw someone with these skills, I would hire them, because I'm like, well, it's not to toot my own horn, because I don't feel that, but it was the first time I felt like, wow, your experiences are valid. What you've gone through as a creative and someone who is also aware of the economy, etc., is valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100% agree with you. When you start putting all that work into context, it does shift your perception of you and stuff. Even me, as I go through this exercise of trying to get a job, I've had to reevaluate my value to myself. I never saw myself as remotely even valuable, and I'm looking at how people that are interviewing me and seeing me from what's like a mirror. You see it come a long ways, an entrepreneur and be creative and all those experiences are definitely are valid and are definitely worth way more than anything else. So 100% agree with you. Yeah. No, thank you so much. This was a very insightful conversation. You see, it's a good idea to do it.
I really didn't want to do it. It was a good talk. It was a good talk to have these thoughts come out of my head and be verbal. Yeah.
Because you never know what they would, and they will allow for you also in the future to see yourself and all good stuff.
Now, if you're like me, are into creativity, borders, travel, and tech, and a better Africa, please subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and follow me, Dylan Espiri, on Instagram, Twitter, and all the platforms, and let me know your thoughts on borders. Thanks for listening. Until the next episode, stay blessed.